Hi, I'm Jonathan Herrera, and welcome to my review of this bass, the LEH Offset 5-string for Bass Gear magazine. For those of you that are not familiar with LEH, I guarantee you're familiar with Ellis's previous employer, Roger Sadowski. Ellis was in fact Roger Sadowski's shop manager for many years. I believe he worked at Sadowski for 15 years, had a hand in making over 1,000 basses there. So if your objective in life is to become a great designer and builder of Fender-inspired, Fender-informed basses, I don't know that I could imagine a better person to do that apprenticeship with than Roger Sadowski. And you can tell when you play this instrument, and I'll get into that. But first, let's talk about what this is. So, it's a 5-string. It is clearly, both just by playing it, looking at it, listening to it, steeped in the Fender tradition, right? Although, of course, it has some differences, but things it has in common. It's a bolt-on. It has a P pickup. Vaguely sort of vintage-ish headstock. Really like this headstock, by the way. We'll talk about that too. So if you were to sort of zoom out and squint at it, you'd say, okay, that's vaguely sort of a Fender. But in many ways, it departs. It is, Roger Sadowski, I think, was really the one to pioneer this sort of like souped up super Fender, particularly jazz bass segment of the, high-end bass market, which is now kind of super crowded. So this is kind of in that space, but I think there's enough that's unique about the space and enough innovation, I would say, in the design that it is almost a short shrift to lump it in with just another Fender clone, because it's obviously in many ways doesn't even look like one. But it is a relatively straightforward bass, and I'm going to go through some of the features first before we check out the sounds. So off the bat, I want to address something that I think is most striking about this instrument. It's what I've noticed people comment on. It's what I noticed when I first played one years ago, and that is that some of these onboard controls are operated via faders, not knobs. I don't really know. I'm sure someone will comment and correct me on this, of another bass that is using faders. And while I do think it looks cool, I also think it makes sense when we talk more about what's going on in how Ellis is conceiving of implementing the preamp. Speaking of the preamp, this is an active bass, of course, and it is a Nordstrand 3-band boost-only preamp. We have volume, blend, and a passive tone, which is active, slightly confusing wording, but is always operational in active or passive mode. And that tone knob also doubles as our active passive switch, just in case you run out of batteries or you want that passive sound. Pickups. We got ourselves a pair of fantastic Nordstrand pickups in this position. The P in our PS, right, precision soap bar configuration, is an NP5. And this is a Nordstrand big rig. So a pair of humbucking pickups. So this is a humbucking bass. It is quiet in practice. Otherwise, a Godot bridge, which is cool. Like everyone, this is not for nothing. I don't know how much of a difference this makes. They're generally all good, but many, many builders in the high end use hip shot. It's just cool to see a different bridge. I don't know. I'm not sure I have a preference. But anyway, for what it's worth, Godot bridge. And the body is alder. And we have a maple neck and a beautiful Honduras rosewood fingerboard on this quarter sawn maple neck. A nice matte nitro lacquer finish, so like a kind of like an old school finish. If you believe in such things, perhaps this contributes positively to the tone. I don't know, I'd like to see some double-blind studies on that. Some luminlay, I can never say that right, luminlay, side dots and fret markings on the fingerboard. So what that means is they will glow in the dark for a period of time. 12-inch radius and a 1 7/8 inch nut. The top, you're asking, I'm sure, I'm burying the lead, is a master grade spalted maple top. So that black stuff in there is spalting, which I believe is some kind of a fungal infection of the tree that leaves this black. And I just love spalting. And while I think it's named for the spalting here, it also has a ton of other beautiful figure. There's some flame, some quilt. It's just a lovely piece. Let's see, we got 18 mil string spacing. So while it's a millimeter tighter than a 4-string Fender, like a typical jazz bass or P bass spacing, it is not that notably tighter. And that's often what builders will do when they're making 5 strings to accommodate, not make the neck too wide. Bolt on with really, really good high fret access here. As you can see, it's, both as a consequence of the body shape, it's cut out quite deep. I mean, this cutaway is starting at, right about the 19th fret. I always get confused on the fret numbers up here. That's 15, 17, 19. Yeah, so 20. 20th fret. You'd think I've been playing for over 30 years. You'd think I'd know that. My bad. And so, yeah, so the body shape is enabling of that, but also there's this really lovely depression carved out here in the body, which I think gives your thumb or your palm, really, somewhere to be when you're up high. It's quite light. It's about, I think, somewhere around 8.5. It's not heavy. It gives you the impression when you pick it up that, okay, this is going to be cool. I can play a couple sets of music with this bass and not suffer. And as I age, that's something I'm increasingly sensitive to. Up here we have some Hipshot ultralight tuners. And I think that basically covers the construction. Oh, very important. We have a spoke wheel truss rod adjustment here. As I've stated previously, someone convinced me of a reason why everyone should not be doing this. I'm almost inclined to ding every manufacturer unless they're trying specifically to evoke some kind of a, older design. Fair enough, reissue or something. Otherwise, do this. There's no reason to do it the old way. And I could be wrong. Maybe there is a reason. I've never encountered a good reason not to do it this way, but maybe that's just me. One of the things I really love about this bass overall is the aesthetic. I think it just is harmonious. I think, Offset, I think the intention with that name was to describe the sort of offset body, much like the original jazz bass was referred to that way, that it wasn't asymmetrical. But I appreciate the body. I appreciate the ergonomics of the bass. It's got a nice cutout here in the right place. It balances fairly well. I mean, it's not going to sit there on your lap without a little bit of help. Of course, a strap would stop all of that from happening. But when I'm playing seated, usually my right forearm is handling a lot of that. But it doesn't just neck dive like crazy either. And I really dig the headstock design. I know from my years reviewing basses and becoming friends with a lot of luthiers that one of the enduring challenges for luthiers is what to do about the headstock. It's especially a challenge if you're in this Fender, what am I going to call it? Fender informed, I think. I like that. So, this is born out of a tradition of bass design that I think evokes the Leo Fender tradition, right? P basses, jazz basses. And someone could argue that all basses are that way, but I think, of course, there's elements of this that speak to that. And one of the things that I know the luthiers who are making similar basses struggle with is how to make the headstock functional, beautiful, or balanced at least, visually balanced, and not do it the way Fender did it, which will incur, at the very least, a very stern letter from Fender's high-powered team of lawyers. And I just like this approach. It kind of reminds me of, some of you may be familiar with Tyler basses, maybe James Tyler, who I believe sadly passed away recently. And perhaps I'm nostalgic for this, but when I was coming up in Los Angeles as a young, budding, serious bass player, all the coolest people that I looked up to, the session guys, Abe Laboriel, Dave Carpenter, Neil Steubenhaus, players like this that are not household names but are on a million and one records. A lot of them played these Tyler basses, and so I just was like, that's what serious players play. And anyway, this reminds me of that. So maybe it's a little biased, but I think it looks really cool. So that aside, the looks, the construction, let's talk about the playability. It is a extremely thoughtfully made bass. It's clear when you play this that Ellis did not just start making basses, 5-6 years ago. It is just exquisitely made. So for those of you that are, fastidious with the quality of the craftsmanship, workmanship, the fit and finish, the way the fret ends are filed perfectly, the kerfs are just perfectly dialed in, the neck pocket is just no gaps. You couldn't slip an index card in there if you tried. The quality and three-dimensionality of the finish, the installation of the hardware, the tactile feel of things, and most notably, the parts of the bass that you really interface with when you're making music, they are just dialed in. The neck contour, the way it transitions into the sides here, the volute here, so this transition into the headstock and the little carve here, the beautiful complex compound carving that goes on here in this transition. It's just, it is flawless, with one exception, and it's no big deal. The battery cover is a piece of plastic, and it has magnets, and I think somewhere in the transition from Ellis's shop to, this was at the NAMM show, I believe, and then to my place, the magnets on the cover side came off. So I had to do the solution. I let Ellis know. He was so cool about it. It's no big deal. I think it's very easily remedied. So I'm not exactly saying this is something needs fixing in going forward in the design, but it is something that, in the spirit of full disclosure, I should mention. Otherwise, there's a little bit of like PPF, a little bit of plastic covering it here. Also, I think because this was at the NAMM show, so if you get one, it won't have this on it. And I've left the plastic on here because after I'm through with this, it's going to go off to a buyer. Playability, beyond what I've already said. It feels really even and balanced and quite capable of a big variety of styles, tones, the kind of like breadth of tone that I think a typical, versatile, working bass player might want. This bass, much like the Tylers I was mentioning earlier, evoked to me, is the sort of bass that if you need a Swiss Army knife, maybe Leatherman, I've been more into a Leatherman, because you're doing, you might be doing a wedding on the weekend, you got a pop gig at a club on Friday, you got a little jazz thing at a wine bar, you got to do a session, a hip hop thing, you got to find, right? You really, I'm describing my life to some degree. It's really nice to have a bass that can kind of do all of those things credibly and reliably. And this is that kind of instrument. Partially, I think that's due to the pickup configuration. So let's talk a little bit about that. PJ, obviously. And I have to be on, I'm not PJ, PS, soap bar. I am not generally the biggest P plus another thing fan. But that said, I think for fulfilling on the promise of versatility, this makes a ton of sense. So I'm cool with that. Let's just say that. And I do think the capacity and ability to solo each and you know, have a credible P sound, because you're literally playing a P pickup, and then a more aggressive, punchy bridge sound that's also humbucking is makes a lot of sense for the kind of player that I think this bass might appeal to. So earlier I referenced that the Offset has boost-only EQ. I am personally a fan of boost-only EQ, and that leads me to why I think using faders is arguably a better choice than knobs. So the reason I like boost-only is I have learned to appreciate EQ that's not as much about identifying the center frequency of the filters and cutting off, you know, just that thing, and then, you know, kind of having a scheme of cut in one band and boost of a certain amount in another, right? This kind of more finicky approach. I like boost only because it's just like turn up some bass if you want more bass, if you need to punch more or be more present, turn up the mids, if you want a little more shine, bring up the treble, play the bass. Do you like how it sounds? Don't worry about how it's set. You know, I find with boost cut, I'm like, oh my God, I'm boosting it so much. Is that, you know, I just think people kind of misinterpret the value of EQ more readily when it's boost cut. And so why are faders appropriate? Well, you know, faders, when you're doing a mix, back in the old days, before, you know, you had AI do it for you or whatever, hopefully you're not doing that. The position of the faders was organic, right? It was something often before automation, you would have every member of the band would have a section of the big, you know, mixing console that they were responsible for. And they were mixing the relative level of things, or a send to a reverb or a delay or whatever, in a tactile way. And they were not concerned with where on the available travel the fader was. It was just this more physical and embodied experience mixing a record. And I think faders lend themselves to that. It's just like you want more of something, or you want no more because it's boost only. I don't know. For me, the faders are the more logical interface for that kind of stuff. And so on a boost only bass, I like faders. So let's hear this. I am going to start with the EQ completely off. Oh, one thing I didn't mention with the weight, this is chambered inside, right? So this alder body has been very intentionally carved out in certain places to eliminate, I think, up to half the weight of the wood otherwise, and then the top is on top of that. And while of course that does do a lot to improve the weight of it, it also may improve some of the resonant quality of the instrument. You know, it doesn't convey a hollow or semi-hollow sound, but you know, everything adds up. Okay, let's hear it. So this is with everything completely off as far as the EQ. It's in active mode. The pickups are blended and the tone is all the way up. So that blended sound, it's focused, it's rich, right? There's a lot of like harmonic information and texture there. This kind of thing in a mix that would maintain presence while providing that bass support. So now we'll hear the blended sound, EQ still off, but with the tone, let's see the tone about halfway, see what impact that has. So it took a little bit of that shine off the top. Very even throughout the range. The B isn't like super aggressive, but it's even and musical, and I hear pitch. Still blended, let's roll the tone off. So there's still some highs in there, but you know, if we compare it, much more color in the kind of low treble range, upper mid range with the tone up, and the tone dials that out pretty effectively. Nice smooth sound, polished, right? Some basses kind of sound pre-mixed, you know, like ready for a record. All right, let's hear the P. So this is P soloed, EQ still off. So we're just getting these kind of inherent sounds of the bass without the addition of the EQ. Tone up. So it's got that grind, right, that you expect from a P. It's not exactly a P, but the harmonics are in the right place and the timbre is very P-ish. Yeah, I'm enjoying playing it a little too much. This review is gonna go on forever if I keep doing that. Let's take that tone off for our thumpy P tone off sound, you know, a little thumb action. Still very much a P sound. And I always find P pickups on 5 strings interesting. There's something different about where they sit, you know, where that, the fundamental kind of, that spectrum of those low harmonics and the fundamental, how they kind of blend. It's unique to the P thing and not very common, right? You don't see a lot of 5-string P. Great. And the high fret access and the sweetness, you know, it's got a real... Okay, so let's check out this soap bar pickup. Gonna be a horse of a different color. Still no EQ. Suddenly I wanna, you know, do my hack jock up. Nice burnished, kind of slick sound there, but obviously very mid-range focused with that brack pickup sound. Okay, let's roll the tone off to, you know, be complete. Great solo sound here, right? Not too harsh and brittle. That sweetness, that nice syrupy. Lovely. Good string to string clarity, right? You hear each individual note of these chords. And this is hard to communicate via video, but I do feel a nice resonance in my body. So this bass is alive. Okay, so that's everything, active mode, but the EQ out. Now let's get the EQ involved. So I'm gonna go back to my blended sound, tone up, and now I am just gonna find a sound. So here comes that bass. And one thing I wanna point out, I'm maxing out the bass. Still very usable. It's not like one of these preamps where really the only first, 20% of the boost is usable. The rest is just outrageous. This is just sweet and musical, nice Nordstrand preamp. So I'm gonna add a little bass to that sound. It's our blended sound. So let's say I'm going for that kind of broad spectrum, modern pop, present, but balanced sound. So, so I brought up the mids there, and I'm gonna take a little bit of those out. So I got the bass up at 75%, mids at about, I don't know, 40. Again, precision is not the name of the game. And the highs, so here we go, here's a nice sound. And like I said, the tone knob is always active. So if you like the kind of general timbre of what you've got, but it's just got a little too much brightness in it, you can always just, so that's a little tone. Oh yeah, now that's like a modern sound, right? I'm no slapper, but. I love when you can slap a B string and you hear the note B and not just. Cool. All right, let's try the P pickup. Now we have some EQ. I'm gonna roll back some highs, tone knob off, a little more bass, cut the mids a bit more even, bass is still up. Nice, syrupy, thick, juicy, pick your adjective. Anyway. I really like the touch sensitivity, kind of, the nuance of timbre that's available across this distance, right? Let's say I'm on a jazz gig and I don't have an upright, or, I want to walk. I might play up here to get that soft sound. All right, so let's check out now the bridge soloed. Now I'll try to find a more kind of bridge pickup burpy sound. So let me take some of the tone off, a little more bass, cut some of the mids. What we got? Always a sign of a good instrument. Harmonics really pop out. Ooh, if I can do that one from Continuum, I know the bass is alive. Let me cut some of those highs, tone off. Good kind of fusion-y back pickup funk. Lovely. Let me take even more of that tone off. And so I often, for like a solo sound, I'll kind of favor the bridge pickup with like the tone rolled off. Not complete bridge pickup, but that sound, because it just gives me more of that articulation. Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's sweet, right? Take a little more mids in there. Bring some tone back. Yeah, you know, I can tell I like this bass a lot. I just want to keep playing it. Even though I'm supposed to be sitting here talking to you about it, I just want to sit here and noodle. And I don't feel that way about every bass I play. So if you're that versatile working bass player or an aspiring one, you like the Fender thing, but you want a kind of natural, logical iteration of that. You don't want the typical clone. You want something refined that showcases a really experienced luthier's attention to detail, sort of why it is relevant that the people making your instruments have a lot of experience. I think this is an incredible option. Ellis is super cool. I know that he'd work with you to find your particular cocktail of options, and there are many. And there are some other models too. So I encourage you to go to the site and check those out. But I'm certainly intrigued. You know, I've really enjoyed having this. I've taken it on some gigs and I kind of want one. So check one out if you have an opportunity.